So sometimes I'm screaming or I'm crying and it's coming out of me, and it's just so much that at some point I'm just tired of crying and screaming. So then I just stop, but it doesn't feel like a big relief yet. It just feels like, oh my God, there is so much. Like it's almost endless.
Yeah.
And then sometimes there there does come an end to the release. And then I feel
Mm,
kind of open, like, hey,
mm.
this had to come out, and now that's complete, you know? Okay, now I can move on with my day.
Are there other pathways available to open and to feel liberated other than what you perceive as needing to be coming out?
If there are other pathways.
Yeah, because if your body mind and your nervous system has been developed and set by the norm of having you release on a daily or in ways that are really expressive and expansive, and that has been your pathway to feeling open, nourished, or recharged, reset, released, whatever you might want to call that, then that becomes the default way in which we come into liberation. I'm wondering, like, are there other pathways that you've encountered that help you feel open without going to those cathartic places?
My answer, no, I don't think so. I think
Mm.
this very expressive release, that thing in my system, that's like the one thing that works, and that's where we heal.
Mm.
So we're going there. And also, the voice I'm putting on right now, that's really how it feels. Like we got to get through this. It's pretty strict,
Mm.
and at the same time,
Mm.
I also feel some love underneath it, like because I want to get through this. I want to feel more open. I feel like I know there's a more light and open life to be lived, so let's go there as soon as possible.
Mm. So there's a connection between light, life, living fully, and moving through whatever emotion is in the way.
Yeah.
Mm. So where do you get to feel the practice of carrying burden?
What do you mean?
Well, when we have created a habit of moving tension, pain, or heaviness out of the system, we're not learning to lift the weights of holding our burden with dignity and stoicism,
Mm,
which is another quality that is supportive in a full dynamic range as men. Like
mm,
what I see in you is something that is medicine for me. That is, I see your capacity to release, to feel more through your body, and to honor that as an emotional wave is really amazing. And a lot of people find that difficult, including me. I would find that to be in that level of emotional release and surrender, it's just simply not available. I can in moments. What I've developed as a practice is the more stoic capacity not to repress, but to hold space for the inner feminine. And I could imagine that if I do not have this capacity to hold burden, not so that the burden becomes heavy, contracted tension, but it's just this natural capacity, like I can be with this. It creates the gravitas, the depth, the solid grounding. That quality is something that has helped me with my purpose. It's helped me in my relationships. It's helped me in standing in the fire of life. Otherwise, life could derail me in every single moment.
mm,
So that's where my question is sourcing from. It's not saying that something is wrong. I'm always curious about balance in myself and in this case you, when I'm looking at when there is such a capacity in one area, it makes me curious about, do you have equal capacity in this other area? Because I think life is calling us to develop both. It's like in the gym only focusing on arms and forgetting the legs, and then we end up being super muscular in the upper body, but we can hardly walk.
Mhm.
So that's what I meant by this question.
Okay, got it. So the holding capacity, I think it is there, but the expression need almost like the desire to
Mm,
just fucking put it out into the world. I don't want to wait anymore. Raw. It's really, it just wants to get out. And now
mm.
when it's there, it's like, yeah, yeah. And
Okay, got it. Now I'm
okay,
understanding more. That feels good.
okay,
Feels good. I'm feeling you. Feels good. Feels good.
okay.
Do you Would you say that right now you are able to direct all your potent free life force to your mission, to your purpose, to your art?
Um, no, because I don't know exactly yet what that is. I'm finding it out
Got it.
these days.
Could it be that part of this need to express and just bring it out into the world is just the overflow of all that creative energy that isn't being directed yet because it doesn't know where to be directed?
That resonates. That resonates. Yeah, and also like for a long time I wasn't so expressive, and now it's almost like everything, one big wave wants to
Yes,
come out. Yeah.
yes. Probably because as you get older, you are getting closer to this need to be on purpose. It's like when we're in our teens and early 20s, it's like we can get by. But my experience is that if too many years go by and our soul has come here truly to experience something, and then we're not aligned or meeting or expressing that soul aligned awakening, it can just come through fiercely and more fiercely. Then the question becomes, does the habit of releasing that help us bring ourselves into alignment, or does it in fact keep us further from it?
Mm. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
In other
That's
words, can your need for emotional release be a steward, a defensive mechanism to you even inhabiting your full mission and purpose? I'm not saying it is. I'm saying,
mm,
could it be a possibility?
yeah, maybe. What's coming up in me right now is this, there might be a fear around what my mission is going to be,
Mm,
whether I actually can accept
mm,
my own mission.
mm. Fascinating. I smile when I hear you share. That's a, there's some energy in what you're saying.
Hmm. And now the word responsibility comes up in me. It's almost
Mm, mhm,
like there's a yeah, that there's a part. Yeah, this is coming up in me. I'm just gonna authentically express
mhm,
myself. It's almost like it's so big. Like how the fuck am am I gonna deal with all of that? If I'm gonna say yes to my mission, which I'm not 100% sure yet what it exactly is, yeah, it's so big. It's so much power there and so much responsibility feels like. And can I handle
mm,
that? That's how it feels.
mm.
And
Got it.
what are other people gonna think of me? That's also a big one in within me. Yeah, yeah.
Hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Good questions.
Yeah.
That's good. That's good. That's good. Yeah. In my life, I have to be suspicious when I hold too much and I'm not asking for help. I'm not allowing myself to release. I'm not expressing my unspokens and my heavy energies that need to be liberated through finding that exit. But I am also aware that that imbalance can occur on both sides. So whatever our default tendency is, we need to be suspicious of that being our dominant tendency as a way of defending against other areas of our life. I am somebody who has found purpose and mission very early, but used purpose and mission to avoid other areas of my life.
Mm.
And I know that my mission and purpose go alongside this frequency of stoic holding of burden and being very good at holding responsibility and dealing with the weight of that and being willing to take that on, and thus facing failure, facing ridicule, facing a world of criticism. This is what I mean by, as well, the dignity of standing in the fire. And what I need is more of how you find liberation. And maybe what you need is more of the qualities that I've developed through my, coming into who I am through all the experiences that I've had in my life. And I think this is the beauty of Circle. It's the beauty of this work where we're each other's medicine. And maybe what I'm saying is completely off too, that it isn't true, but I sense there might be something there. Have you ever defied your father's will?
Defied? What does that mean?
Defy means to go against what he wants.
Uh, yes. Yes. For example, with study, he wanted me to finish my study, and now I still didn't finish my study, and I'm not even sure when I'm gonna finish it.
Okay, got it.
Mm.
Got it. Got it. Interesting. In that, yeah. So what I'm with when you share that piece, because I've no idea, like, if this is accurate or not, but was the study that you were doing just not aligned to your heart? Like, did you get into it for the wrong reasons, or did you just get bored or feeling like I can't be bothered to complete this, and you were just feeling like you didn't have the energy to persevere to complete what you had started?
Right. So the first study I started was exactly what my father did. Yeah, exactly what my father did. And then I stopped, and now my last study I started is something that I really like, but then some other emotional stuff came up, and I took a break.
So in the second study, your father tried to support you to complete it, and then you said, no, I'm going to pause anyway.
Yes, yes, kind of like that. Yeah.
Did he do it in a toxic way or in a loving, kind of boundaried, forceful, fatherly way, as you would expect a dad to do? Like, hey, stop fucking around, get on with it and finish it.
Mm. Changed over time. In the beginning, it was like because he didn't finish his studies and he regrets it. So he was really like, but finish your study, like okay, just finish it.
Yes,
And
yes,
then
yes, yes, yes.
and then I didn't finish the first one and the second one, and now I'm actually on my third. And
Sounds like your dad is a cool guy. And that although, yes, he had maybe some regrets or some personal overlays, there's a difference, you see, between a father who says, you're going to be a doctor because I'm a doctor, basically, versus you started something, now finish it. Because the second is support, and it's confronting the part of us that doesn't persevere and penetrate through the burden. Again, this is coming back to the burden conversation, because let's say as you do your studies, it starts to get boring, overwhelming, a lot to do, emotional stuff comes up, relational, whoever, whatever, stuff's happening in life. In that moment, burden hits, life hits. In that moment, do you have the capacity to carry the weight and go through? Or do you use that as the reason to go, this must be my guidance telling me I'm not meant to do this study? And I'm saying that too many of us switch away when it gets tough, because we haven't learned to penetrate through burden in order to see what's on the other side of that. And I think that's why even more traditional things like military practice for young people is actually quite a good thing in certain countries, because it drills that in. I had that through devotion to martial arts and training and being pushed beyond what I thought were my physical limits. So I believe there's some value when boys become men in that transition, where they are initiated through rites of passage of suffering, where they are put to the edge, where they're put to the test, where there's no other choice but to persevere. So they know the experience of penetrating through burden. Because otherwise, if they don't know that, then they'll always see resistance as an indicator to move and to change course.
This resonates.
So, yeah. So it's not about being tough and hard, and it's not that. But I can feel or sense maybe where your father was coming from. But it doesn't sound like he was overly toxic about it, at least initially, in terms of like he just wanted to remind you. And maybe, as you said, maybe there was some personal overlay. There usually is. I mean, who doesn't have their own filters covered? And yet, there might still be wisdom in that piece. Only you can decide, because you can look back at your life and go, have you ever had the experience of being in a situation where you've started something, it got tough, and then even though everything was saying around you like, quit, don't do this, too much, too overwhelming, too hard, this isn't even enjoyable anymore, it's not even what I want anymore. So all the doubt, and then bam, you kind of break through that threshold. I'm curious, have you had that experience?
Recently, I'm looking for those experiences, because I also noticed in my life that I was walking away when the burden got heavy.
Yeah.
And last weeks, I'm actually looking for my physical boundaries and acknowledging that, and then pushing through anyway. So I'm learning that skill now. And so there was my motivation for doing things changed. When I just started studying my first study, what happens was I just went for my studies. I didn't even think about why I would do this study. It just unconsciously, like, yeah, this is what my father does, so I guess I'm just gonna do that too. Just go for it.
Mm-hmm.
This is normal. Also, yeah, like something, this is
Mm-hmm.
normal. So I just did that without thinking, like without thinking at all. And then then at some moment I started thinking and feeling like, but wait, what do I actually want? And then I started also in that process to just do nothing and to just let everything go and let's see what happens, and just follow the first signals of my body. And then I kind of adjusted to, oh, when my body has the slightest resistance, I'm just gonna do nothing. I'm just gonna listen to my body now. Yeah, okay. So then I was doing for a long time, yeah, little challenging stuff, I guess. And now with finding who I really am and knowing where I want to go, now I'm learning to go through these burdens from a more intrinsic motivation and not on an automatic pilot motivation.
Cool. Yes. Nice.
Yeah, yeah, does it make
Yes.
sense?
Totally. Because the
Yeah.
autopilot motivation is often a push that can get toxic when we're pushing, when we don't even know why we're pushing. And it's usually
Mm.
conditioned throughout, because that's also something that I inherited as well, was ambition and drive, but often at the expense of even feeling, is this what I want? Is this even healthy? Is this connected, regulated, and all of that? And yet, you know, we've all been given through our environmental epigenetic situation gifts, right? Your upbringing has brought you into contact with your gifts, and my upbringing has brought me into contact with my gifts. And again, I feel the work is to round ourselves off, meaning to begin to practice embodying yeah, it's actually, as I say this, there's actually two parts to this. It's honoring the gifts that we have and aligning our life to their strengths, but also not to let those gifts be so strong and dominant that they prevent other areas of life from blossoming and coming into existence, so that these parts don't become a steward for a life that you are destined to live, but no longer are you able to reach what you're destined to live because these other aspects are getting in the way. Like there was this story that's it's not really a story, it's a visual, that somebody was looking for gold and they found the field where the gold exists, so they were in the right place, and they started digging, and they dug around 4 feet, and they were exhausted, and it was getting really, really hard to dig any further, and they were like, there's no gold here. So then they went to another part of the field and tried again, and they must have dug maybe 30-40 holes, and they found no gold. And yet there was one person who went to 6 feet and struck gold on their first try, because it wasn't so much about how many places did they dig, it was they dug deep one place and they struck gold. So if the gold is at 6 feet, but everyone is giving up at 4 feet, everyone will have the experience of there's no gold. Another way of saying this is there is no traffic beyond the extra mile, meaning if most people can only run a mile and everyone stops at a mile, beyond that mile there is no competition. You have the whole world to yourself. So this endurance and quality of perseverance and determination and penetration beyond the limits and thresholds that we ourselves place or the world places upon us, there is liberation there, because the liberation beyond that threshold is a life that you could never even dreamed possible until now. This is what I meant by, are there other pathways to liberation? This is one of them. It's not enduring pain and suffering, it's going beyond the extra mile and noticing that you are alone there in a really good way. Now, I speak from personal experience here, because when people hear, for example, my personal story of what has happened, where I've been, what I've experienced, often the response is, you've done a lot for your age, or it's amazing that you were able to achieve X, Y, and Z. But that has come through just one quality, which is indomitable spirit, which is faced against overwhelming odds going beyond. And that quality is something that can be trained and developed and cultivated, and it's part of being in a culture where other people are like that too. It's very difficult to inhabit that on our own. That's why so much of men's work and brotherhood is built around challenge. It's because as men we need to find our edge and meet it and stretch and go beyond it. Not to the point where we're suffering in an unregulated mess because we've stretched too far. You know what I mean?
Yes. Oh, and there's the balance. At some point, you just feel like, or I can feel like when it's just unregulated, where it kind of gets ugly, so to say,
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
and then maybe that's too far. And while I'm saying this, there's also another voice coming up in me that says, "No, but that's where you have to push through. That's the moment you have to go even harder."
Mm-hmm.
And maybe sometimes that's true, and sometimes that's toxic.
And then the question would be, would you even care and be having this conversation if this country was invaded by a hostile enemy, raping children and women, and only you and other men were there as the last line of defense?
Then you just gotta go. Like,
Exactly. You
uh,
just gotta go. You just gotta go. This is the energy that wants to be inhabited but not lived in every moment. What I mean by that, inhabited meaning is, can we feel this burning fire ready to go but isn't activated, that's burning us out, that is in fight and flight and in survival mode? But it's knowing that this place exists in us, and then we can draw on that power in order to bring out the sword, to penetrate life, to move forward in the direction that we want fearlessly, with courage, no matter what our father thinks, mother thinks, brother, sister, whatever our culture, community. That's this is the energy that it wants to be known, and we need to know that we can rely on that when the shit hits the fan. We're there. And is that an attractive quality that others, men or women, irrelevant, but I've experienced that not when you're necessarily living and in that, but it's somebody can feel when you have that developed, right? So you could be soft, in deep connection with yourself, tender, sensitive, exquisitely empathic, emotionally attuned, and yet somebody can feel like, don't fuck with him. I know he can go there. I know that no matter what, he has this established. And with that, there is a unfuckwithableness quality that is solid, that's rooted, that is this sense of like, I would go to war with this brother. I would follow him into battle. Not because he's in life. It's like this felt capacity that is just present. It's part of his essence, part of his being. But it gets cultivated in these years that you're in right now. And my hunch is that all this fire and energy is a call to action to develop and be in that more. It's my personal thought about it.
Mm-hmm. To be in that more. How how did you do that, for example?
Well, first of all, I went through the toxic route because my father, when he was young, didn't know how to be with the intensity of his emotions. So he lashed out and I received the overflow. So there was a lot of physical violence, what many would call abuse, violation, in the form of being hit, and often for very small transgressions. So it wasn't like I did really bad things, but small things would set him off. So what would happen is that I developed a hardness in response to that level of violation. So one layer of how did I do it? Well, I didn't do anything except defend myself energetically, even physically, and build a resilience. Okay, so trauma can do that. The difficulty that I have in my life is, well, I don't often feel safe because of this, so I need to spend a lot of time unwinding. But
Mm.
others who have been brought up in relative safety, they need to learn how to not fight, as in the fight flight kind of unregulated nervous system response, but fight for their life, fight for what matters, fight for the right to live a destined life that isn't going to be handed to them on a platter, that isn't necessarily easy. And so when you ask me, like, how did I come into that? So one pathway was, you know, hard times. Okay. There is this saying that says, hard times create hard men. Hard men create good times. Good times create soft men. Soft men create bad times. Bad times create hard men. And so the cycle continues over and over again over many, many generations.
Mm.
The men that fought in the Second or First World War, our grandparents, our great-grandparents, if they saw how we live today, they'd be like, they're fucking soft. What the fuck is going on with them? Now, that might be harsh, and it probably isn't the whole truth. And yet there's truth in it. Like, if something like that were to happen again, would we be ready collectively? Maybe not initially, but I tell you, after a few years, something would come to the surface. In other words, the second piece that I want to mention is, we don't develop this in order to achieve or be ready for something. Something usually comes in from life that readies us. It's not like I am ready for this, but I need to be ready because it's in my face.
Mm.
So if I'm surrounded by comfort, if I'm surrounded by ease, life doesn't even have a chance to meet me to the point where I get to raise up to meet it. And so there is this quality of like I felt really alone. I felt I had a huge abandonment trigger when I was young. I felt not enough, and I felt very insecure. And so I fucking fought to be seen. I learned how to get attention through winning at all costs. I got a taste very early on that if I could be better, I got attention. And that glory cannot be shared. So team sports were out of the question. Needed to do something where I could stand alone in stardom, in the light, and be seen. So again, this is where trauma or core unworthiness turns in the body to generate drive, ambition, and a need to succeed.
Mm.
And I'm not saying that this is a healthy way. I'm telling you that I came from a traumatic drive that is balancing out now into a softer drive in my late 30s and 40s. But the opposite will be true for anybody who grows up without that drive, because then that energy is going to come into their system like it is with you, and it's going to call you into a willpower, a spirited kind of energy into life that you're either going to ejaculate out through video games, whatever it is, getting lost in the metaverse or whatever that might be, or you find an outlet that is creative where you can make art out of this energy. Now, I made art out of my trauma. You may not be able to do the same because you may not have that same level of violation and trauma. Good. I wouldn't want that for anybody. But you're going to have to use a different source of fuel to still achieve the same kind of frequency, because there's something still being called in your soul, in your heart, in your system that wants to be integrated, that wants to make you the man that you are.
Mm.
Do you understand what I mean?
Yes, 100%. And now, yeah, I'm following you 100%. And thank you for sharing. And so now you're saying, yeah, so now you have to kind of focus it in your life's mission or in your art, in your creativity, whatever it might be. And that's the question now for me. I feel like I am in touch now with kind of that life force. I feel like there is a lot of stuff that wants to be expressed.
Mm-hmm.
I kind of know where it is most of the times.
Well, it might be simply just to finish your studies.
Might be,
Not,
yeah.
not because I want to be your dad right now, but it's more about like, you don't finish your studies because you want to finish your studies. You do it as a spiritual practice to complete.
Hmm.
You don't do it to get favor of your father. You do it because you say, you know what, I started it and my integrity says I finish it because I'm
Yeah.
a man of my word. And I need that experience in my life to complete. Because if I don't, other parts of my life are also going to remain incomplete. So I don't know how long it will take to complete, but as an example, this is something you can do that doesn't require clarity of mission, clarity of, and I'll tell you something magical. When you
Hmm.
when you make the decision to say, I'm going to complete this no matter what, during your studies, you'll probably get clearer about your mission, because mission loves to arrive at people who are willing to meet it.
Hmm.
But if you're looking for it from a place of, I'm not willing to meet the difficult burdens in my life, I don't think it comes. I don't think we create it from that place, personally.
To just finish something out of spiritual practice, that might be helping me here, or at least show me like, hey, I can finish fucking something. Like your resistance there. When I'm saying this, it's like, no, but yeah, I know,
No,
but
it's
it's
great. It's
just
great. It's
it's
beautiful. I
it's
love it.
al it's almost something different than th th what I want to say now. I know my purpose. It's, I know it, and it's not in. I'd say, okay. I'm just gonna say what I feel. I know my purpose. It's not in school. It's 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 not in school. It's something artsy. It's something like an. What I want to say right now is that I just want to fucking sing, and I want to maybe
Mm,
dance, but I want to sing. I want to fucking
mm,
sing. I don't want to
mm.
fucking finish my school. I want to sing. Okay. Well, now there's also some, while I'm sharing this, there's also some insecurity coming up. Like, what the fuck are you saying, Rick? Like, what is this? I, I've had two singing classes, and that was great. It really felt like yes, a big yes to me. And at the same time, it almost feels like there's something deeper that wants to come through. Like, yeah. This conversation is going all over the place anyway, so I feel like also just sharing this with you now. So, I, what's also been on my mind in my feeling, this this longing to be a sponge from for what you, Christian, have learned. Like when I go to the Heart IQ events, I learn so much, and uh, I take that with me. And what was coming up in me last days was, is there a way that I, in some way, can be more close to you so that I can absorb all that interesting knowledge about yeah about connection, relationships, your mission, feminine energy, masculine energy. I I feel like I need someone who I trust in on some level to show me a kind of a bit more still before I know exactly what I want to do. It's almost like I'm longing for a mentor, and that's what's going on in me right now.
Get it? I hear you. I think that's so key. So, without being specific around the how, I just want to say that you naming the what is really accurate in my system in terms of I have had the privilege and blessing of mentorship, without which I don't believe I would be sitting here talking to you in this way and having hard IQ. That literally, not that I was given my purpose by this mentor, not at all, but there was something about having access and being close to somebody that I could absorb, using your words, just to be around and learn and absorb the wisdom. It was just a huge part of my initiation in life. It's like, have you ever seen the film X-Men?
No.
Okay, doesn't matter. It's a cool film. It's a cool film where the world is basically saved by these superhumans that are actually mutants, and these mutants are rejected by the majority of the normal mankind, womankind. So these mutants gather at a school, and this school is where they learn to focus their mutant powers so they don't get overwhelmed by their fire or their energies that, left untamed, unmentored, uncrafted, could hurt them. It could hurt the world. So basically there's a school that exists, and the professor who runs the school is called Xavier, or Mr. X, right? Hence the X-Men are his students, who he helps turn these mutant powers into their superhuman gifts, which then go out to serve and save the world. In times of trouble, there's now this conscious group that go out to meet adversary. Do you understand what I mean?
Yes, 100%. Resonates a lot.
Yeah. so,
Hmm.
so, and you'll be amazed how many times I have heard this call from others about creating like a school for like the modern day X-Men. Because in a way, I'm a mutant and you're a mutant. And because we have a mutation that makes us different to the cultural norm. And for whatever reason, that mutation is a blessing and a curse, and it needs to be harnessed. Did I tell you about
Yeah.
my mentor, Jerry?
No, and I was about to ask, what does that relationship look like between you and Jerry, but also maybe between you and Neil Donald Walsh back then?
Yeah, these are two beautiful beings in my life, and they are very different, and they looked very different when I started and even today. So Neil was somebody who, when I met him through a book, like many people do. They read his book. And when I read it, I was like so incredibly touched. Conversations with God, it was called.
Yeah.
The book kept on arriving, kept on coming into my hands. And eventually I read it and I was like, I'm reading my own soul. Something about it felt so touching and true. And I just had this similar hunger that you expressed around, I want to learn from this guy. I want to absorb his knowledge. I want to be mentored by this man. So I set it as part of my goal to find a way to make that happen. And then I went into strategy mode. I thought, what way would he possibly say yes to something like that? This is a world famous New York Times best-selling author that probably gets 10,000 emails a day. And there's probably hundreds, if not thousands of people just like me knocking on his door saying, please, sir, could you mentor me? You know what I mean?
Wait, I'm gonna interrupt you here because I know this story, and you went to
Yes.
America and you went on the
Yes.
book tour, and then at the end, all the people around him knew about you, but he didn't.
Yes.
And then you got there, and at some point you were 1 year with him on, on the road,
Yes.
I guess.
So to
What was that
summarize all
like?
of it, yeah, but
Yeah.
to summarize all of that journey into one, there was a willingness to, one, recognize that I wanted to be mentored, but two, I went into what would stand out. What could I do that nobody else would do? So, do you remember I said there is no traffic beyond the extra mile?
Hmm.
So I had to look at, how do I go beyond the extra mile so I stand alone, not with hundreds of other people that he's choosing from? I needed to be so visible that it was no other choice but to be me. Then I surrendered. So first, I read the book and I connected to the longing. Second, my mind came in and strategized a way. Third, I let go and let God. And then, as you said, I went on that journey. And then I met his wife and all these made magical things happen, and boom. But I had to first be willing to meet life, and I had to first have a strategy, a plan. The plan changed, but the mind was there too. So that's an important part. That time with him was fabulous and also distant. And what I mean by that is he was always the facilitator on stage that had some form of personal access, but our relationship was mainly me turning up to a lot of his retreats and listening to a lot of his audio and video recordings, transcribing them, working, in other words, for his organization in exchange for learning and mentoring. And I didn't care. I loved it and I wouldn't regret it. And I think that's awesome. I think everybody should do that more. Personally, I think that's a great thing. I gave him my time and energy, and he gave me education, not even one-to-one, but just through having access to his archive. And he also inspired me to even have an archive. I have an archive. I've recorded every single retreat since 2010. I have 13 years of multi-day events. That is a resource and a library like no other of education. But it's just sitting there, right? I don't do anything with it because it's an archive. I haven't got time for that. So, these kind of things, I had the initiative of going, I went to him and said, I'd like your archive. I want it. And I just started to spend days and days and I just sucked it all up. So that's one form of mentoring. During that year, I was at events and I was watching and reading and transcribing his archive. And this was a really good training. It was just training, basically. Jerry felt very different. he was a mentor for me as a man to grow into the potential of who I am as a human, as an enlightened, wise, embodied man living with an open heart, irrelevant of my purpose and irrelevant of the work. Because there's a mentorship around your work. Like, let's say, for example, you want to be like a practitioner of a specific type of healing art. You would probably want to seek out the very best that you can have access to in that art and then learn everything you can from it. Because your mission and purpose is to be the best practitioner of this art you can be. Well, this makes total sense. But there's also the mentorship called how to just be a fucking amazing human, which you can apply to this practitioner. You can apply it to being a dad. You can apply it to being a friend. You can apply it to being fill in the blank. It's that second mentorship, even though Neil, I had the most amazing opportunity with, and he was far more famous and it carried a lot more glitz and celebrity and glam. And on the website, borrows far more authority. In other words, people are more instantly impressed to hear that I'm tutored by Neil Donald Walsh than some random guy who plays golf in Florida. But the one that touched me and changed me and helped me the most was my connection with Jerry. Because Jerry became the imprint of the human I wanted to be. I was in awe of how he lived his life, and it had nothing to do with the technique of being in circle, technique of anything. I mean, he did try to get me to meditate a lot, and I found that so freaking difficult. I hate meditation. I find it so, I mean, the classic meditation of just sitting, breathing, focusing on just that and just sitting. And he spent decades trying to get me to sit. And I still don't sit regularly. It's because, and here's the because, it's either I'm still not ready or willing, or it could just be it's not my way of getting into my body, getting present and clear. Either way, it doesn't matter. He was a fabulous, fabulous mentor. And even though he lived in the United States and I was living in the UK, every chance I could get, I went to visit him. I stayed at his house for a few weeks at a time. And we would journey together. He believed in me. He supported me. I dated his daughter even, which felt like amazing for a moment, because I thought, you know what was amazing about dating his daughter? I loved her to bits. She's an amazing being. And yet I also felt, oh, how cool, I can now be closer to Jerry. He could now be officially like my dad. Because in a way, I was looking for a healthy version of my dad. I suddenly realized that Jerry, although I love my dad to bits, Jerry has certain qualities that my dad doesn't, because my dad didn't have the opportunity or upbringing or the path in his life to develop these parts. And I needed those parts. Just like you need certain parts that may not be intrinsic to your family system. I think most men need parts that they don't get from their family system, which I think they need to get elsewhere. And I think mentorship is key. Because otherwise we're just swimming in the same pool of what we already know.
Yeah.
So even hanging out with brothers and all those brothers come from the same pool doesn't necessarily elevate you. Which is why I think when you said, I want to move house, I'm around younger men who are kind of partying all the time. It's no longer me. It's like, that's cool. You're wanting to like find environments that are like more conducive to who you're becoming. It feels healthy. So yeah, that was I mean, there's a ton of cool stories about Jerry, which I'm not going to go into now, about how we met and synchronicities, and it's all profound, as you can probably imagine. And yet the bottom line is he remains a friend today, but we're friends, not mentors, because eventually this balances out. He learns as much as from me as I do from him, because we've equalized in that relationship.
Yeah.
That's cool. But it took me traveling to see him and I had to be the one to take initiative. There was no free handouts in that regard, in terms of I need to show my commitment. Now, he did support me in many ways, including financially, when I got clear about what I wanted and I was pursuing it.
Yeah.
It was quite profound. I feel very, very blessed to have had him in my life, for sure.
Mm.
So we met at a martial arts seminar in Arizona. Arizona is a city in the desert. Tucson, the town we were in, is in a large desert in Arizona. So I was attending a martial arts seminar. Now, here's the important part to that. I was 19 years old, and I was in the US at a martial arts training. Now, that in itself carries a lot of clues. So I was living in the UK. I was studying as a chiropractor. All my friends were out partying. All my friends were out basically spending money on, having a student life, whatever you want to call that. What I had done was I had taken my passion for martial arts and monetized it, so that while everyone was out partying, I was at home training, and then I set up a school to teach. This school brought in money that allowed me to buy a ticket and go and seek out the best martial artist in this arena. So again, this is me like going, who do I want to learn from? Who is the absolute best? So I didn't just go to a local martial arts school, because people who are teaching locally rarely have the knowledge. I want to go to the same guy who came to the US with Bruce Lee. That's the guy I want to go to. So I went to the source. And this is what I do, whether it's with Neil Donald Walsh or with martial arts, or I did the same with in salsa dancing. I went to Miami, I went to LA, to the source of LA crossbody salsa. I wanted to learn through the people who are actually leading that industry. And it was horrifically uncomfortable, because they're really good and I felt really shit. But the point is, it's this pursuit of knowledge and not being settling, really, and doing what it takes. And when there's money involved, is finding a way to manifest it so I can do it. So the reason I say that is I met Jerry because, and only because, I was in an environment where he too was seeking out the best instructors, because he was also a martial arts instructor. In other words, where do you think people like this are hanging out? They're not hanging out in a bar. They're also not just going to be right there because you put it out in the universe that you want to meet them. There are certain quality spaces, quality places, quality types of activity that draw in quality people. And therefore, it's about how do you get into environments where you have access to being seen by incredible people. And so for me, going to this martial arts seminar in the year 2000 or 1999, around this time, was just an incredible experience to be with this master of martial arts. But I was also seen by Jerry. So the way Jerry saw me is he was watching me for days before he approached. And what did he see? He saw a kid from the UK, and he saw that when everybody went home, I stayed in the gym. I was training an hour longer, came in an hour earlier. During the lunch break, I was outside with my pole, practicing my different forms. He was watching. He was watching to see, like, this guy is going to go places for no other reason that his tenacity, his dedication, his perseverance, this indomitable spirit. And that is how we met. It's not because, oh, I just happened to arrive and we just met and he just looked at my aura and said, oh, this is a beautiful man, let's get to know him. No. And it's the same for me. It's like, if I'm looking at who would I want to devote time to, precious time, it's like, fuck, man, I want them to be living their life. I want to see that they're already meeting life and that I can just help nudge them deeper, further in that. You do understand what I mean? But if somebody's sitting around doing nothing with their life, I've got zero interest in mentoring anybody from that place. So somebody needs to show up if they want to be met. Somebody needs to be supportable in order to receive support. You have to be meetable if you want to be met. And therefore, I was in that kind of like energy of devotion and dedication to my art. He saw it. And then on like the fourth day of that week, he called me over in the parking lot one lunchtime and said, "You seem like a nice guy, but that's not the reason I'm here. I've got an invitation and a message for you that you need to hear." And then he started to channel stuff about my life that no man should have a right to know. It was profound. And then I then made the decision to go, shit, there's something about this guy that I really like. I'm going to visit him. And then I made the promise to go visit him in Manhattan and New York. And I booked a ticket a few months later. And then there I was, walking by his side, engaging him and watching how he interacted with humans and people, and the mentorship journey began, and I needed to continue to keep that going. It was very much on me to establish and stay connected. I was hungry, Rick. That's the bottom line.
Yeah.
Not hungry for, in a way, hungry for power, but not power like in, but power in the sense that I knew I had a power inside of me. I wanted to become the empowered man. And I saw this empowered man, and I was just like hungry to claim me. And I saw he had the key. He had at least a key, or the key for me. And he was willing to help me bring all of that to life. And I've had some beautiful technical masters like Neil Donald Walsh and Tej Steiner and Donald Epstein and other magical healers and practitioners and facilitators who have shown me the art of embodied speaking, charismatic leadership, circle work, healing, and different types of theoretical. They're brilliant for my work. But that's not the same as being mentored as a human being to live on this earth and to meet life fully.